Hey folks, this is Jake Davis with a top 5 video for you tonight. I don't think I've done top 5 video in many months. Maybe not since New Year's. But I got a new ring light here. Hopefully my kids don't break this one. So I decided I'm going to use it and do a video for you. A few years back, Disney bought out 20th Century Fox, which officially put an end to Fox's 2-decade run of adapting Marvel movies. Between 2000 and 2020, Disney Fox made 20 movies based on Marvel superheroes, and I'm going to rank down my picks of the top 5 best movies of those films. It was a touch more difficult than I thought it would be, but I will cover all films. I will give you my brief opinions on all of these films. So my number 5 is, I'm going to say, Deadpool. Deadpool's a movie lots and lots of people love it. I think it's a terrific movie. I think it's a great movie. But I really think it's a film almost solely held together by Ryan Reynolds. That movie was exactly the same. With anyone else but Ryan Reynolds, nobody give a shit about it. It has serious problems of its visual effects and its score are both mediocre. The films, if you've seen what it takes, it's the scenes and concepts and moments right out of other revenge films from over the years. You could just blow that off as being, meta or self-aware. That's literally just an excuse for not being creative or original. And I think Deadpool, now looking back at it 6.5 years later, I think it caused some problems with the comic book movie world. There was, everything had to be R-rated. Everything has to be deconstructionary. Everything has to be comedy. Now, it's ended up causing more harm than doing good, ultimately. As far as comic book movies go, for Ryan Reynolds, it was the best thing that ever happened to him. And that's Blake Lively. So they married to Blake Lively and Scarlett Johansson. My number 4, I would say the original film, X-Men from 2000. Terrific movie. I saw it in theaters twice when it first came out. Made Hugh Jackman an instant movie star, and launched the X-Men Fox universes. I do remember being kind of surprised that the sequel got greenlit so fast, because while it was a really good movie and got good reviews, it wasn't something that set box office on fire like, say, Spider-Man or the Avengers did after it. What's up, homie? But still, it doesn't take away from its terrific performances from so many cast members. Really got to call out specifically Hugh Jackman, Ian McKellen, Anna Paquin, James Marsden, and Rebecca Romijn. They're all just really good. And I think I love you too, baby. I think Ray Park, Halle Berry, they're okay in it. They're certainly not hurting the movie in any way. But it's a very damn good movie, and it's nice to go back and see superheroes movies. It was a changing of the guard, where movies started to become more about the characters and the adaptation of bringing these characters from page to the big screen. Before this, superhero movies, like with the Batman movies, for example, were always more about what big movie stars can we get involved in this, instead of who's actually right for the role. And this movie kind of changed that. And number 3, Logan. Logan is terrific. I should probably go and warn you now. Yeah, this is going to be a very very X-Men heavy list. Logan picked up an Academy Award nomination for Best Adapted Screenplay, the only comic book superhero movie to ever do that. The Incredibles was nominated for Best Original Screenplay, but like I said, it wasn't a comic book first. Logan was terrific. It was a wonderful mixture, taking inspiration, of course, from the comic book storyline Old Man Logan, but at the same time taking strong influences from old westerns and Man with No Name, The Man with No Home kind of storylines, like one of my all-time favorite movies, Shane. Straight up sits there and tells you, oh, we're going to do this bit from Shane. Again, this doesn't justify not being original, but overall, as this goodbye to both the character and to Hugh Jackman's performance as in the role, it was a very touching and very powerful movie. I think it's an excellent movie if you're a fan of the character, fan of the comics. It's a must see. Number two, top two were difficult here. They're hard for me to narrow down on which one. But for number two, I'm going with X2, or X-Men United, or X-Men 2. Annabelle, don't say that. Man, what an experience. I've compared it, I mentioned before that The Empire Strikes Back set the foundation of how you make a great action movie sequel. We divide our heroes and with multiple objectives, and we put them on the go. X-Men, maybe more than any other action movie sequel ever made, embraced that great idea, that approach, and it pays off. And yeah, sure, you could argue that. Can't argue it. It's straightforward that Cyclops and Rogues, especially Cyclops, and even Professor X, the roles are played down a lot more, but it's all in the sake of building up new characters, and new characters you care about, like the Nightcrawler, and like the monstrous General Stryker, who is, for my money, the best villain in the X-Men movies. X2 is a fast-paced, thrilling motion picture. And I'll never forget, in the theaters watching this movie, when Nightcrawler jumps out of the Blackbird and saves Rogue. Oh, man. They fucking cheered. They cheered for the movie. That shit doesn't happen really that often. Terrific film. Again, another great must-see, which has an intense and powerful third act, which is a whole hell of a lot longer if you go back and watch it. The overall third act of the movie, like them going to Alkali Lake to the finale, to them leaving, is nearly an hour long, that whole sequence. And my number one, the best Marvel film from 20th Century Fox is X-Men First Class. It did what not only seemed impossible, but also unnecessary. Was it really necessary to have an origin film for the X-Men? No. Was it necessary to have this comic book? The whole gimmick of the X-Men is they don't have an origin. They're just people born this way. That was what Stan Lee said for years. So when they did it, when they took it, it was phenomenal. It worked so much better to me than so many other origin movies of the time, where little bits and little pieces of them are put together as the film goes on and the story builds. Like the decisions to start using his old family's mansion as the headquarters. Oh, my dad built this bomb shelter that could be the danger room, and even the lovely gag bit at the end of the movie where McTaggart says, "No, you're better than G-Men. You're X-Men." Fucking loved it. Loved it. It's a masterful movie. And one of my favorite scenes in all of the X-Men movies is when the kids are partying and start giving themselves code names like they're spies. And then when they get back, it's like, "You're Professor X, and you are Magneto." And Magneto's, that's acceptable. I love that bit. Of course, the great ending. I prefer Magneto. It's a great movie. It is the essential X-Men film, the one to watch. And Magneto's great speech on the beach at the end of the movie. I feel their metal. Americans, Russians, humans. Fucking greatness. Now, my only real honorable mention, the one I really wanted to put on here, was Days of Future Past. It's a terrific movie, great movie, and was the first X-Men movie to get an Oscar nomination for visual effects, for Oscar nomination of any kind, I should say. I decided to put Deadpool on here for two reasons. One, instead at number 5 is because I wanted a little bit more variety. It's literally the only movie on my top 5 that doesn't have Hugh Jackman in it. And other than that, I thought that Days of Future Past, while great at the time, did two bad things. It now connected itself to the timeline of the original Bryan Singer movies, and Brett Ratner movie, which First Class wasn't necessarily part of. It was its own beginning, a whole new thing, much like Batman Begins. And by doing that, it cut its legs out from underneath the future McAvoy Fassbender franchise, which we clearly saw like right away with the next movie. And the second problem with that is, weren't they just ripping off J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie? I mean, that's what it was. It's kind of a ripoff. And when Terminator ripped it off again a few years later, yeah, there's no more room. No more room for that nonsense. The tolerance and interest for that kind of thing was gone. The other X-Men movies, might as well get through them. X-Men, The Last Stand, genuine piece of crap. One of the biggest failed opportunities. What ended up becoming the WB style of making a superhero movie. Let's just throw everything at the board, leave no room for story, or in many cases, no room for action, and just make it one missed opportunity after the other because there's too many subplots going on. I mean, the fact that Colossus and Juggernaut never fight in that movie just goes to show you that nobody making that movie had any sense of fun going on. Throwing stuff at me? Apocalypse. I personally love Apocalypse. I think it's a very fun movie, very fast-paced action movie, but it is too long. And that's why a lot of people don't like Oscar Isaac's performance. Yeah, sure. Maybe he wasn't quite ready or just didn't have the right approach to the role to perform through so much makeup. But I still thought the movie was very fun. I had a bigger problem with Magneto being one of the four horsemen. Magneto is going to be anyone else's right-hand man. You know what I mean? Dark Phoenix. Say the same thing I said about with New Mutants. That I'm going to say with New Mutants. I'm going to mention them both here. I try not to judge those movies too harshly. They're bad movies. As far as straightforward, it's probably the worst two films that Fox made. But it's very obvious that there were reshoots and rewrites, and things don't gel. And it's very, very obvious that Disney had a hold of these characters, this property by then, and they didn't even want to bother with these movies. They didn't even want to release these movies. It felt like more of a chore or a burden to Disney, like an obligation to Fox, than it actually was someone trying to make a good movie. Yeah, it's just, they're not good, but them being not good isn't entirely their fault. Deadpool 2, it's okay. I mean, I like Deadpool 2. Josh Brolin's terrific in it. Zazie Beetz is wonderful. The return of Juggernaut and finally doing Juggernaut awesome I thought was great. But the biggest problem to Deadpool 2 is the movie doesn't have a villain, and it has one of the biggest cliches and crutches that sequels do that I've always hated. Is when we take our hero back to go. He basically has to relearn and redo all the regrowing that he did in the first movie all over again, just because they, again, don't really have any ideas. The first movie was Darkman, the second movie is The Terminator. Not very creative. Where am I on this? Oh, okay. The Logan movies. The first X-Men Origins, Wolverine, bad. It was one of the first movies me and my wife went to see at the theaters together. And I remember I kind of liked the kind of throwback. It felt like a wandering, aimless man, very much like Josie Wales, but it ain't Josie Wales. I'll never forget leaving the theater. I'm sitting there going, it wasn't great, but it had its moments, right? And my wife's just like, no, that was a piece of shit. Had terrible visual effects, and just, my God, straight up enraged people how it mistreated so many characters. Not just Deadpool. Deadpool was the most obvious one because Ryan Reynolds was such an obviously perfect choice for the role. But, also the way that they wasted the Blob. They wasted, what's his name? Gambit. And the White Queen. And then we just... they threw Cyclops and Professor in there for virtually no reason. And they totally misdo. They totally fuck up Wolverine's origins. Completely out of place. Let me pause this for a second. The Wolverine. James Mangold's first shot at making a Logan movie. Uh, I don't hate the Wolverine. I actually like the Wolverine. But to me, it's a similar situation with Deadpool. Take out Hugh Jackman. The movie doesn't work. I love the concept of Wolverine, basically Wolverine in Tokyo, taking on the Yakuza, human villains, gangsters. I thought really fit him. But again, we waste Viper, we waste the Silver Samurai, and it's, the thing pushing the movie the best to me, I thought it's genuinely maybe the best performance Hugh Jackman has put in to the whole series. Not only is he, all the levels of that raw, unfiltered emotional and anger are still there, but also there's the physics of it. He's more jacked and ripped than he was. He's in the rest of the series, and his haircut is just perfect. Fucking perfect for Wolverine. It's worth watching just for Hugh. Get to the Fantastic Four movies. I like Tim Story's films. They're both seriously hampered by too much camp and not enough money. I didn't really like bringing back Doctor Doom for Rise of the Silver Surfer, and I hated what they did with the Galactus. The first film, I think, standing on its own, is a fun movie. It's a good movie. I enjoyed it. It made Chris Evans a star and showed that Jessica Alba could fucking act. No matter what you say, the girl's not a terrible actress. Sorry, guys. But yeah, it's a fun, really great movie, and I still prefer a physical, on-set Bing Grimm, guy in a bunch of makeup, to the motion capture. Like I said, I like both Tim Story's movies, but they both have the same problems. Especially what one movie focuses on, the other movie is a little bit too bad on. I didn't think the sequel was big enough of an ensemble, and like I said, way too much camp this time. Fantastic Four 2015. Oh my god, that's painful. That's painful. Probably lost, brain cells in years of my life watching that piece of shit. It's an utter mess of a movie. And the big fucking takeaway, well, if the director would have had his way, another 45 minutes of the shit that I didn't like about the movie? There's one scene in the whole movie that's worth watching, and that's the third act. I love how Michael B. Jordan literally looks like a drawing of Jack Kirby's Human Torch when he flames on. But other than that, I got nothing to say positive about the movie. I like the third act. I like the Human Torch effects. And I think that Miles Teller was a good choice for Reed Richards, but just 15 years too young for the role. And Kate Mara actually could have worked fine as the Invisible Girl, but the reshoots for that were so terrible when she's really blonde and when she's wearing a terrible, terrible fucking wig. Daredevil. Daredevil is a movie I've always struggled with. I don't like it, but there are things I like about it. But the bad things weigh down the good things. Especially once you see the TV show, see how good Daredevil is supposed to be, it's easier to go back and watch that movie and not hate it quite so much. Thing I liked the most about the movie were not the villains. Michael Clark Duncan was perfectly cast as Kingpin, and Colin Farrell did a serviceable job as Bullseye. But I hated the visual effects, I hated the film score, and what really sold that movie, made it good, made it watchable, at least for me. Like I said, never really liked it, was Ben Affleck. Thought Ben Affleck did a terrific job as Deadpool was Daredevil, and I loved Daredevil's home. The whole scene, coming home, listen to his messages, picking a hunk of broken tooth out of his mouth. I thought it was just so cool, so badass, so Daredevil. But, he has to sleep in a sleep deprivation chamber just to get some sleep. But that's totally thrown out, 30 minutes later into the movie when they want him to have a set scene with Jennifer Garner. Just so they can have that scene. I mean, he has super hearing and has to sleep in submerged water just to turn it off and sleep, but she's able to sneak out on him the next morning. Okay, all right. Elektra was trash. It's putrid. It's absolute garbage. The villains suck. Garner's terrible. The action scenes are putrid, and it has the most predictable, obvious storyline you can imagine. I understand the scene is supposed to show her being a control freak and being OCD, but the scene where she's just laying out her toothbrush and shit out on the sink in the bathroom, playing up like it's some badass moment. Even the director didn't even know what the hell he was trying to say in this movie. Ghost Rider. I liked Ghost Rider for the most part. It definitely had some serious problems, mostly Nick Cage's hair and his CGI abs. And the coolest moment of the whole movie is immediately erased because seeing two Ghost Riders, one a biker, one a cowboy, galloping to this ghost town to fight these demons would have been an awesome ending. But see, what, you could just ride with him? Why don't you wait till we get here to turn into the badass monster? Then you can actually fucking help me. Ava Mendez is, I mean, she's the comic relief, and I kind of understand going that way with the love interest in a superhero movie, but a lot of the jokes don't really land. It's really none of her part. It's just the way that they write this woman who's supposed to be an investigative journalist can't put two and two together. And the sequel just exists for no other reason than Nicolas Cage wanted to do a second one. And it's worth watching for his absolute insanity. But replacing Peter Fonda with now Kieran Hines, at least we get a cool villain in Blackout in that one. And that's all 20 of them. I covered all 20 Fox Marvel movies and just reminded you while doing so why they're not making any more. Supposedly, Marvel's going to go ahead with some Fantastic Four movies, with some X-Men movies now called The Mutants. We'll see. But I'm to the point where I don't know if it's even possible to salvage the Fantastic Four as a cinematic franchise now when you're literally on your 5th fucking try of doing so. Anyhow, hope y'all enjoyed this video. I'm Jake Davis, and I'll catch you on the fly.